Okay. Go. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the first series of webinars called The Art of Case Management here at the Arizona Housing Coalition. We're excited to have such a strong reaction to this topic. We were told there are a couple 300 people attending today. So super excited to see so many people are interested in this topic. As this first series regarding the art of case management, we'll be looking at to our audience for ideas for upcoming sessions. So as you have those ideas, please feel free to throw them in the chat throughout. We're always open to ideas, and we want to make sure that we're providing content and information that you all are interested in seeing. So first and foremost, I just wanted to spend a hot minute just say, defining case management. And that is really case management is a process in which a professional helps a client develop a plan that coordinates and integrates the support services that the client needs to optimize their goals and outcomes. In our field, that really means to helping a client prevent, minimize, or end their episode of homelessness. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that in our conversation about case management, we're not just talking about in permanent supportive housing, we're also going to be talking about how that affects outreach workers, shelter staff, and then also in rapid rehousing programs as we're going through all of this. So kind of keep those models of case management in mind as we're discussing that. Whatever models of case management your organization employs, you need to consider case management ratios, workloads, and funding. That's more or less going to be the topic of our conversation today. And today we're super lucky to have 3 subject matter experts in the realm of case management. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to the panelists for a brief intro and introduction. Just going alphabetically, Julia, I'm going to start with you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Julia Matthies. I work for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. I am the Associate Chief Programs Officer here, and I've been working in case management for tons of years, probably more years than I care to say, but more than 15. And I think at St. Vincent de Paul, we're focused mostly on case management in the shelter setting. So we have some shelters and we have some transitional housing programs. And then we also have some more outreach workers who are focused on getting people who are recently homeless, or it could be chronically homeless, but quickly back into housing, so more of a transitional case management model. And most of our programming is focused in the Phoenix area.
Great, thank you. Sandi, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sandi Flores. I'm the Senior Programs Director for Catholic Charities Community Services, and I serve in Northern Arizona. So we cover Mojave, Coconino, Yavapai, and a little bit in Navajo and Apache counties as well. It's going to rain today. It's very cool up here. You guys are probably jealous. And we do a wide variety of programs. We have outreach, homeless outreach through our PATH program, and then we have shelter, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, reentry housing, all different kinds of housing. I've been doing this with Catholic Charities for about 17 years, and I started out as a case manager. So hopefully have some information to share today. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Terrance.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Terrance Watkins. I'm the Housing Director for Community Partners, Inc., which is a division of Intermountain Centers for Human Development. We serve Pinal, Pima, Cochise, Santa Cruz, Graham, and Greenlee counties. As far as my bio, I am a person of many lived experiences, including homelessness. And I've been working in this field for 15 years. So that's my quick, short, brief bio.
Awesome. Thanks, Terrance. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with some questions here. Sandi, I'm going to start with you, and then we can kind of open it up as things go along here. So first question is, each one of you operates different programs, multiple programs simultaneously, and also throughout different areas of the state. Can you talk about how you manage staff ratios across programs?
Sure. And this is a really complicated answer, right? Because we have so many different varieties of programs. And, a client that is in permanent supportive housing has different needs and different need levels than someone in rapid rehousing or in shelter. So I think that the key for us is to, a number, we can't assign a number, a caseload number. It's really about balancing those caseload sizes so that we can adequately serve those that we're serving and with the quality of services that they need. So I think it's a combination of looking at which programs, how often you need to see someone, how often you could do alternate forms other than in person, if you could do some virtual or just some phone check-ins. I think that's how we figure out caseload sizes and how we balance them the best.
Julia or Terrance, did you have anything?
It's like, who's gonna
You're
say
both
this?
nodding, I can see you.
Yeah, I think so partly, I was thinking partly some of the work that we do at St. Vincent de Paul is similar, where you can't really, it's hard to put a ratio on it, especially with the program that I mentioned, where we're transitioning people from homelessness into housing, because we'll take as many people as we're doing with that. But it's also kind of like I call it a lighter touch case management. So it's mostly working on getting people through that transition period. And so they can have typically a higher caseload, it's like 1 to 50-ish, but it depends on how many people they have in that transition period. In our shelters, though, and our housing programs, they're a little more like structured. So Ozanam Manor is our transitional housing, and we've been around for years and years, like almost 40. And so we have kind of, through a long period of time, discovered what is the best ratio for the group of people we serve. The people who live with us, they're all, a lot of them have medical, complex medical problems and psychiatric problems and all the things aside from their just housing goals. And so our caseload's like 1 to 20 for that group of people, because we kind of need to provide that more complex case management. And then in our shelters, like our Washington Street shelter, at this moment in time is really opening its doors to people who have been unsheltered around the Human Services campus in downtown Phoenix. And we're finding a higher acuity of folks coming in. And so we're trying to look at ways to decrease that ratio so that we can be more intentional and more intensive in what we're doing. So some of it is just balancing, like keeping our eyes open to what's going on in the programs and the people we're serving, and then balancing our ratios, kind of right sizing them based on that, which I know we'll get into like the barriers to doing that sometimes, but that's kind of one of the things we look at.
Sure.
All right, for me, I'll just say 50. No, I'm just kidding. Similar to what the other panelists said, we always go by based on what the program is, what the program needs. We mainly specialize in permanent supported housing. So our caseloads tend to be a little bit higher than usual, because we find that once you get the people in, we get them stabilized, we start working on behavioral health, medical. Like after like 6 months, we pretty much, fingers crossed, got them going pretty good. And so the needs kind of die down. But we do have programs such as our medical respite program, where these individuals have a lot more medical needs and they require a lot more help and assistance. So that caseload is limited to 20. We also have several programs that work with our transition age youth with serious mental illness. And that's a energetic group, that's what we'll say. So yeah, we definitely keep the caseload sizes a lot smaller on that program. And I know this kind of bleeds into the other one, but one of the main things that we had to consider when we were creating our programs and fine-tuning it was, I can't burn out my staff. So it takes constant evaluation, reevaluation. But if it gets to the point where this staff member isn't even a good firefighter anymore, where there's like 7 or 8 fires burning simultaneously, and they have to triage and figure out which one is the most important and let the other ones burn asunder, then we need to adjust that caseload, because that's not good for the staff, it's not good for the member, and it's just not good practice.
Right, and I think, Terrance, you just naturally transitioned into the next question, so I'll just throw it out there, which I really think is, human capital is the backbone of this field, right? We are dependent on all of our case managers to really be in good mental health, physical health, to be able to do this. And I think it's important to talk about not only what is your staff training, but also like what are some of your staff retention plans. Since Terrance kind of started this, I'm going to turn this over to, I think, did I say Sandi first, or Julia is next?
Either one. I think I was thinking about this retention question. And one of the things that it's kind of like the elephant in the room for smaller organizations is like pay structure, right? So during COVID and during when we were worried about our staff members who were kind of battling their own stuff at home versus here, and you know, there was trouble hiring people in general, our agency kind of took a look at what we were doing and across the board raised our minimum pay scale so that everyone like at minimum coming into St. Vincent de Paul hopefully is making a livable wage no matter what. So that's one of the things that we did as an organization and just kind of took a leap of faith as far as figuring out what that looks like for our funding, because I think that takes a measure of stress off of people if at least they don't have to worry about like finances in addition to like their caseload being on fire, right? So that's one thing that is just like our retention in general is just we want to make sure people are okay. And the other thing that we do at St. Vincent de Paul is really work on our culture here. I think I've worked a lot of different places, and I think St. Vincent de Paul is uniquely focused on providing a culture for the people who work with us that is pretty much the same as the culture we want for the people we're serving, if that makes sense. So we try really hard to care for each other, to celebrate with each other and have fellowship with each other, and on a really natural way. And then we really help people to focus on the mission that we're doing so that we're all kind of working on this common goal together. And I think that helps strengthen people when they're not feeling so great. So everybody really is very mission focused here as far as, you know, we're here to feed, clothe, house, heal. It's everywhere for St. Vincent de Paul. And so like everyone, our case managers know that, we all know that. And so we're all kind of working together towards this goal. And that's our culture here. And that's another way that we kind of work on just retention and is just working on our culture.
And I'd love to jump in on the training piece. I think, yes, we looked at salaries, we did that, and burnout, you know, is obviously a thing. And coming through COVID was unique for all of us, right? I don't think any of us went through a pandemic, have gone through a pandemic before, but one of the things that our teams figured out was that we were in turbo mode, right? All the way through COVID, and then struggling with being short-staffed and trying to recruit folks, and then we throw them in because we're so busy, and are we taking the time to really train them appropriately? And so our housing team just recently had an all hands on deck training here in Flagstaff, a 2-day retreat type training where they just literally took each program and went back over it. And I think the new folks really appreciated that, because I think sometimes we tend to be so caught up in the busyness of it that we forget that we need to slow down and make sure that our staff feel trained, because that'll help with that burnout.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And one thing that we did recently, like a lesson that I learned recently, we started a common goal for all of our case management programs. Like we want to house 2,025 people by 2025. Like that's our goal. And so one of the ways we did that we're working on that is we have an interdepartmental case conferencing. And the thing that I learned is that these case managers, like they really need that larger team, and they're the ones telling us like, we want training on this, we need this resource, we need these things. And it's helped us to strengthen our support of the case management team by just having that regular time of hearing from them what their needs and giving them that space to share resources and support each other.
On our end, it's almost like a religion. We are really, really, really serious about our staff. I'm like watching my words here, making sure I don't say something bad. I routinely tell my staff that this building, this company is not their life. My staff have family, kids, spouses. All of that is super important to us. And so that's kind of like the backbone. It's the core, it's the foundation of how we work with our staff. If, you know, and we're a fully integrated housing division. So we do we bill Medicaid, we have medical services, we have all of that. And as anyone who works in the Medicaid world knows, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. And we don't get paid. So while it's a super important part of the program, if a staff member needs to leave on time today to go make sure that they can take their kid to softball practice or whatever, I need you to go and leave. I need you to go take care of your family. When you come in the morning, I expect those notes, but I need you to take care of your family. That being said, with as far as training, it is really, really, really rare to find someone, any employee or potential applicant, who knows how to do housing, knows a lot about housing, knows about HMIS, and knows about Medicaid billing, because it's such a niche. So we've just locked it in our mind. It's going to take 6 months. When we hire someone, it's going to take me 6 months to get you fully trained up. So we have, like, of course, our NEO training, and then when you come out of there, we're going to do packet training and housing training. We're going to give you not necessarily a brief overview. We're going to do a deep dive to get you started. And then we do continuing education every 2 weeks. We have training on, it's our all staff meeting, but we have continuing education on what is counseling, how do you bill it, what justifies these notes, what do you do in this situation. There's changes to HUD's HQS. Even if that staff member is not HQS trained, they work with their members, and they're going to be the ones who need to work with their members to get them ready for it. So that's kind of when it comes to training, we're just all on board. We're not going to rush it. I say we don't throw you into the deep water. We walk you briskly to the deep end. Because of course, like, I still have staff that are just drowning, and they're like, hey, when's that person coming on board? Hold on, we're getting them there. We're getting them there. But that's, I feel if I don't do all of these type things, it's just not going to work. We're going to have retention, or we're going to have turnover. It's just going to be crazy. Then the fewer staff you have, the more stressed your current staff are, and then they start leaving, and you end up with a mass exodus. And it doesn't matter how many apartment complexes I have, or how many millions of dollars I have in funding from how many different sources. If I don't have staff, we're dead in the water. So I keep that at the forefront of my mind, and that's how we proceed here.
Can I say something that's kind of like, I don't know, it's just, hopefully this is not too far off topic, but as you were talking, Terrance, and about that structured way of training that you have for people, at St. Vincent de Paul, we've grown from, in the last 5 years, we've grown from having one program with 3 case managers to having 4 programs with dedicated case managers. I don't even know how many we have. And we used to only have 1 program with a government contract, and now we have government contracts at most of our programs. And with the government contracts, usually comes some kind of requirement for training or for different expectations for case management. And I've actually found that to be very helpful, because they go through and they say, we want your folks to be trained on exactly these things. And it also has allowed us to then build into our budgets, some dollars for training of our staff. And so before, it was just kind of like scrambling or doing it on our own or kind of piecemeal. And now we actually have a training plan for our case management staff. And so rather than that being kind of like a hoop to jump through, which I think some people, including me, thinks of working with government contracts as having a bunch of hoops to jump through, that's actually been really helpful for us, because it's helped us to standardize our training plans and kind of what we do to support our case managers.
And I'll just add, sorry, Matthew. I was just going to say, I think that culture piece is really a critical piece also. And we work pretty hard on our culture as well. But I think if we can't tell each other when we're struggling or when we need a little help, or figure out ways, to help each other, I think we're again, as Terrance said, dead in the water. I think that's when it leads to that burnout and people leaving.
Right. And I think one of the things that I think has kind of been coming up, and this is maybe just Maricopa County specific, but there's been a lot of discussion about a learning management system to kind of create some standardized trainings. I'm not sure, does that exist in other areas of the state? And are you able to speak to that? Or is that something you're interested in seeing happening?
I think we would love to always hear, we always want to hear everyone else's ideas. I mean, why recreate the wheel if somebody else is doing something? So I don't know that we have a super structured program up here, but if you guys have something you're working on, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, for sure. It's new. It's like getting off the ground. I mean, Julia, you might be able to speak to it some. I know that we've been starting. Here we go. Pam is saying all three OCs are implementing an online training system. So that's a way to integrate. And I think slowly it's a content building process right now, but it's something I think to consider as you move forward for like not only your new employee trainings, but also whether or not that can't be integrated throughout the year as you're kind of doing some of that as well.
Yeah, what's nice about those training plans, at least what I've seen of the content on there so far, is it's specifically focused on content for case managers working in the homelessness area. So
Right.
It's not just like behavioral health focused or this focused, but it's like things you're going to come across. So.
Right. And I think that there is behavioral health aspects to it, and there will be behavioral health, but then there's also like COC 101, there's also case management 101, there's rapid rehousing, some of the basics. And I think that's really kind of where things are starting to go. So I'm glad to see that it's kind of being rolled out, and hopefully we'll start to see the momentum as the content grows as well. Awesome. Again, everybody, if you all have questions, please type them in the chat. I appreciate everybody's been, typing who they are and where they're from. Super good to see that. But if you have questions as well, feel free. We're willing to take those on. So next question is, providers funding may not always have sufficient availability to meet service needs of the client that you're serving. What are ways that you've been worked to balance the client needs and funding availability?
I'll jump in on this one. So I think that being in a rural area up north, part of what we have to do is collaborate. There aren't 6 or 12 or agencies all doing the same thing. We oftentimes are the niche, or there's 1 or 2 of us, and the collaboration is really the key. If we don't work collaboratively with our behavioral health partners or our food insecurity partners, then we're working harder. So it's better for us to work smarter, collaborate. I think we do it really, really well in all of the areas. But I think that's the way that we can provide a continuum of services for the individual, but they're not all directly out of our house. We're working with the experts, content experts in those other areas. And then, volunteers are hard. I think we love volunteers all the time, but that's hard when you're talking about case management. But we use a lot of interns, and interns, if you can get your social work and sociology and psychology interns, that is a really additional source of support, folks that are learning. So you can't maybe give them a full caseload, but even if you can give them some of the work, that really does help as well. And it helps them to grow at the same time.
Yeah, I will second the intern thing. That's one of my favorite strategies. It's one of my go-to things. We've had interns at Ozanam Manor for I don't know, 25 years, I think. So, and typically social work interns, and that helps. Like our standard caseload is like 20 people for every case manager. But when we have 3 interns on board, that turns into more like 15 to 17 for every case manager. And so that helps us a lot to just kind of spread things out. And then I think they also teach us a lot. They bring in like new ideas. And it's a staffing retention thing, because you see the interns who are very motivated and passionate about the work. And very often for us, they turn into employees. So I will always champion interns. But at St. Vincent de Paul, we actually have a very wide volunteer base. There's 2 parts of our mission. One is the serving piece. The other piece is allowing other people to serve. So we bring in people, not necessarily for case management exactly, but we bring in volunteers to do all of that, all of the other like enrichment things. We work with a lot of universities. We have a university coming in to do physical therapy for our residents. We have a committed volunteer who comes in and just fills out applications with our residents so that, you know, the case manager isn't sitting there filling out applications. So we bring in volunteers to do a lot of supplemental things that help our case management teams out.
As for us, I look like this, but really I'm like a super nerd and I love numbers. I always have to, it's continual. I'm trying to find a balance. So being a licensed behavioral health provider, we don't try and take on everything for the housing specialist. So my housing specialist is not responsible for making sure you get to your doctor's appointment. They can help and they can coordinate, but it's kind of like a shared burden. So we have, if a member is enrolled with us, they'll have a housing specialist. But if they're enrolled with our outpatient, then they'll have an outpatient case manager as well. If they're receiving medical services, they'll have a medical case manager. If they're receiving our medication assisted treatment, they'll have a MAC case manager. So that way it helps to reduce the burden on them. You know, in theory, I would love to say everybody has a caseload of 15. It's nice, clean, simple, and sweet. But we're approaching like close to 1,000 members in housing now. That's a lot of staff. And so, and like if we have COC funding, we're able to braid that funding with the Medicaid funding in order to reduce the cost of the staff. So having those additional funds that will be available to help offset the cost of having staff, that plays a huge in being able to keep the caseload ratios low, preventing burnout. It all ties in. But again, I'm just like constantly watching my numbers. I have a very enthusiastic CFO who also likes to watch my numbers as well. So it's a constant balance. And while I'm trying to make sure the caseload ratio stays low, the staff are not burning out, but I need to make sure that we have enough, like we're producing enough funding to pay for the staff costs. So anytime we can get additional funding that will help cover the cost of staff, then that is really where it makes all the big difference in the world.
Right, so there was a question about interns that kind of came in. So since we just kind of mentioned interns, what is your opinion of unpaid interns? As a social worker who was paid for my internship, it was easier for me to focus on what I was learning.
I think that would be great if the funding were available. I will say that I'm in Flagstaff, Northern Arizona University has a new AmeriCorps program this year, and a lot of their students can now get stipends for their internship, and that has seemed to increase some interest. But I would love to see that be something that, you know, we could look at in the future. I think even a stipend, even if it's not a full pay, but something, because of the amount of time they're putting in. I think there's some options there.
I agree with that. I wish I could pay like all of my interns. I will say, and I'm sorry because this is probably going to be a little unpopular, for a time we did have some stipends for interns, and I did not notice a significant difference in the performance or the dedication from our paid interns from our unpaid interns. So I know that on one hand, it makes our interns' lives a lot easier to be able to have a stipend. I understand that students need that. But I didn't see that it was a significant benefit to the program to provide that stipend for the interns. So I'm sorry, I know that's a little rough. I still would really like to pay our interns because I think it's fair. But I from like one of my, like my program hat, I'm like, you know, so sorry.
Right.
I really, to be honest, I don't hire interns. We don't, as I said before, it takes us 6 months to get somebody fully trained up. And that timeline just doesn't work. So if you're here for the summer, then we spent all this time and effort and we got you fully trained up and then bye. So it just doesn't work out well. So that's why we haven't used interns. There is a school that our company works with that will provide some staff, and we're able to use them for clerical work. But as far as the getting them out and working with the members, and then it's also too short of a period of time. Our members don't do well with change. Everyone likes consistency, and this is the person. I've built a rapport with them. So if I give you a person and you guys have come together, you've created amazing things, you've moved mountains, and then they're just gone. And that just doesn't bode well either. So.
Right, I'm going to go ahead and take this time to kind of move on to kind of our next area, which is really getting at workloads. So I think we've talked about staffing ratios, and I think the other kind of like piece of this puzzle when it comes to case management and ratios is really overall workloads. And we haven't really talked about what we need to do additionally. So like right now, in addition to your ratios, what challenges do you have when working with staff to manage caseloads? And I think it's important to acknowledge there are a number of different things, whether it's, you've already mentioned it, notes, travel, crisis, virtual or in person, and also I think we've kind of talked about this too, is the acuity of the individuals that we're serving and kind of how we're managing some of that. That's a really big topic, but I kind of did that intentionally. So I will pass it out to Terrance first, because I think I haven't asked him first. So.
Yeah, all of that. Really, the hardest thing that I think I have to deal with is when our staff have members that die or really traumatic events, or because our QM department says, oh, well, that's housing. In order to get in our program, you literally needed to be having a really hard time, harder than anyone else in our continuum, whichever continuum it's in. And with that comes just a lot of stuff. It comes with death, drug use, child abuse. And so when we get the people who come in here and they're all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and I'm going to save the world, and then they start seeing this is, and it's real, but we have great therapists. We have company provides therapy for our staff, and I've hired a lot of supervisors. I had to justify why I hired so many supervisors, and it was because my staff needs support. They need to know that there's someone who can help them in that situation when it comes up. Another thing that we have is, of course, productivity, because that keeps the lights on. So my quick little cheat statement is you need to bill enough to pay for yourself and pitch in on the electricity. But that, in order for them to do the notes, that takes time. So if the staff member is required to bill for 5 hours of their day, but they were driving for 2 hours and they have 2 hours worth of notes, that math doesn't add up. So those are things that we work with on balancing. We're super big on, again, training. So we do trainings on boundaries, and not only boundaries with your members, but boundaries with us. Like I said before, we're really big on you having your own life aside from this building. So those are probably the hardest things that we have to deal with. And I feel really blessed right now that I haven't had a mass exodus in a while. And I have I have about a squad of about 30 people. They are battle worn, ready to go. They're enthusiastic, energetic, they're experienced. And so for us, it's just that finance, the notes, the travel, and helping them deal with the crisis.
So some of the questions that are popping up here is, do you provide time in employees' calendar to do notes? And then also, do you have productivity goals? I think those are both on par with what's being kind of talked about here.
Yeah, and just to finish off we do. in all transparency, our staff need to bill for 4 hours of their day. That's what keeps the lights on, pays the rent, the utilities, and pays their salary. That being said, we encourage you to stop answering your phone at 4 o'clock. If it's a medical emergency, they shouldn't be calling you, they should be calling 911. If it's a police emergency, they should be calling 911. If it's, and like we train our members, we teach our members these life skills. If your toilet is broken and it's flowing, you need to call your maintenance line. And we teach them how to do that. So really there's not many quote unquote housing emergencies that can't wait till the next morning. So we ask you to please stop answering your phone at 4 o'clock, which gives you time to be able to enter in the remainder of your notes that you have from the day. That way you can still get out of here on time and get back to your family.
I think for us at St. Vincent de Paul, we don't typically schedule anything for our case managers. So our expectation is that you're managing your schedule and your goal is to help your assigned folks with whatever they need to get into housing. So what I've done, because, of course, then you're having a lot of conversations about time management and helping people to prioritize things and still get the work done. And notes, of course, like documentation, of course, is always a struggle because people don't become case managers to write notes, really. They become case managers to work with people. And so one of the things we've done is my case managers have an option to work a 4-day work week. That's actually part of our retention strategy as well. A lot of our case managers can work 4 days a week. And then that kind of gives them more time at the beginning or end of their day so that they can get their paperwork done and documentation done. And that's worked really well for us.
Yeah, and I think that our, like, for example, our outreach folks, because the outreach is, it's travel, right? It's out and about and here and there, and you never know what you're going to encounter. You never know what the day is going to be like. They try to schedule an admin day each week so that that's their day to catch up. They plan to be, in the office or if they're working from home, but they plan that so that they're not part of the team that's out and about on that day. And I think, for our housing folks, that's a little bit harder, but they try to do that. We also rotate an on-call. We have several communal settings. So we have somebody that's on call and we try to rotate that so that there isn't everybody getting calls all the time. There are some crises sometimes, when you have 8 folks living in one house, things pop up, things happen, and if it's a behavioral health crisis, we're obviously going to call in the behavioral health folks, but we sometimes can just handle it with a phone call. Sometimes we have to go out, but we try to do that so that it's rotating through folks, not the same person every single time, and encouraging them to not work after hours and things like that. And, I know sometimes they do, and that's hard, and boundaries are a hard thing, but I think trying to encourage that and let the person that's on call be the person, even if you get the call, you send it to the on-call person. I think that's, one thing we attempt to do. And I want to just touch briefly on the virtual and in person. And I think that through COVID, that was great. And that really helped us out. And I think that there's a time and a place for it. But I think that part of the challenge with doing everything virtually is the knowledge that you gain when you go out to the unit. And you see things that may alert you to something that you need to call the behavioral health folks, or you notice this or that, or, there's a culture among the unhoused where, I got help. Now I have to help the person that was next to me in the woods. And so they're now living with me, even though they're not supposed to be. And I think that you don't always catch that if you're just doing either a virtual or a phone call. So I think there's a huge value in making the time to go out. There was a question that popped up, and I don't want to jump the gun, but that said, how do you work with behavioral health partners, or how do you engage them? And I think that's one of the ways. We are an extra set of folks that can be, as the housing provider, that can be out and about to the home to notice things that are happening. And that is a benefit, I think, to the behavioral health folks. If you're not, like Terrance, you're the same agency, but for us, it's not, it's a separate agency. So that is one of the ways that we can show them that we're a benefit to them, because that means those folks are getting double the visits. So just touches on it a little.
Yeah, and I think you transitioned nicely, Sandy, into like the discussion about like really partnerships. I think we talk about balancing workloads, and I think a big portion of that is that recognizing we don't always have this, we're not the subject matter expert on everything, and who are the partners in the community. So can you talk about what partnerships you may have found in the community that kind of help to balance out your all's workload?
Sure. And, you know, in the rural areas, when we started doing coordinated entry all those years ago, that kind of became the norm. The players that we needed were coming to the table and talking about housing, but the pieces that you need outside of the housing are also critical. So, you know, we have a family food center that serves a hot meal every night, so we can direct folks to that. There's food boxes in all of our communities that folks can access. A lot of those food providers will actually deliver to the communal settings or deliver to the shelters if that's a need. So that's a big piece. Behavioral health is, I mean, for us is the critical piece, because all of our folks we hope are engaged in something. And if they're not, we're trying to engage them. So that's really important to involve them. And, you know, we see ourselves as part of their team. We want them to see us as part of theirs. And how can we benefit each other? And that just goes back to that question. You have to find the way that shows that there's a benefit to that partnership. And then I will say we do a lot of reentry housing across Northern Arizona, and the partnership with our probation department is crucial. We don't staff those properties 24 hours a day, but if you have folks that are on probation, you have probation officers that are rolling through the properties. And so partnering with them and being eyes and ears. I mean, we're not here to get someone if they're not doing the right thing, but working collaboratively with those justice partners is also really critical to a client's success.
Absolutely. Question I think is common. What if they refuse to work with you?
I think it goes back to that. You have to show them why you're valuable. And I had a mentor many years ago, and Pam's going to know who I'm talking about, but who said to me, well, you just need to tell them, do they want to work with their clients housed or unhoused? Because the housing provider is critical to keeping them housed. And I kind of think that while that sounds a little bit snarky, it's true. I think that you have to understand how each other is the key to the partnership. You have to convince them of the service or the value that you provide.
I think for us, we try to get as many partners involved as possible to support our members, and really as many partners as we can on site, because I think there is something to be said for, like, when you send somebody to an appointment, whether it happens and whether or not you get the information back on how that appointment went is like, you know, you've 25% chance at best. But if you have somebody on site providing those same services, you know, if they made it to the appointment, they don't have to deal with the bus system. They don't, you know, and they know the person because they see the person there every week. So our partnerships are, so at our Washington Street shelter, we have a behavioral health provider on site all the time. So they're always there to provide those services to our folks living there. At our Ozanaw Manor site and our resource center, like, we have DES coming in to do benefits. We have mental health providers coming in to do counseling. I mentioned before, we have partnerships with our universities. They come in to do services for people. We have a good partnership with Circle the City. They come to all of our sites and provide medical care. We are partnering with Gellert Health to do some health navigation for some of our folks who have medical issues. So I think it depends on the needs of the population. Like, we don't have a strong relationship with our probation department because we don't have that need, but we have a really strong relationship with the VA, and we have a VA social worker here 3 times a week and things, you know, so it kind of depends on the setting, who we seek out, but we're constantly having conversations with people to try to bring in more people into the mission, bring more people on site to provide more services for people that are living with us. And that seems to be the most successful thing we've done.
Sure. So we've got a couple of questions that have sort of come in here, so I want to try and get to some of them. So talked about turnover at agencies and how you're kind of managing some of that. I don't know if one of you can speak to when you've had turnover, how you're addressing some of that. Yeah, Terrance, go ahead.
So to answer the last question, and I'll lead into that one. This is what if they refuse to work with you? When I first started doing housing, and I would call an agency and be like, hey, I have housing for your person. They're like, yeah, I don't know, figure it out. And they were a lot of shut doors, because not only do we house, not all of our members are enrolled with CPI or Pinal Hispanic Council or Intermountain. We get them from Kodak, Law Frontier. We get members from wherever they're at. We meet them where they're at, and we're not trying to come and pilfer all of the providers to get all of their members to enroll with us. That has changed to me. It's definitely changed, and Access has put a lot of mandates in effect that have also helped change this culture. But normally now when we get a referral for a person for housing, it's like within 30 minutes, their case manager is calling, hi, I heard my member got housing. How can I help? What can we do? And it's because it's a lot harder to case manage someone when they're homeless. There's a lot of issues that they're dealing with. They're constantly in and out of the hospitals, and now the case managers want us to be there, and they're like, hey, they got housing, great, and like, let the sunshine in. As far as when they turn over, I'm lazy, and so I like try, anytime I go to a new site, I try and meet the site manager. That way, if this case manager, like this phone number doesn't work anymore and we can't get a hold, they don't work there, I just call the supervisor at the site. Or even if it's someone that I don't know, I always ask for the site supervisor, because they're the ones who are going to know, yeah, this person doesn't work here anymore, it's been reassigned to this person, let me get you their number. As far as the partnerships, we are also a continuum. We run the continuum of care for Cochise, Santa Cruz, Graham, and Greenlee counties as well. We are all about partnerships because I can't, nor do I want to do it all. If this is not my wheelhouse and there's someone who does it way better, way more efficiently, and it's going to work better, then that's what that's for. So we have all of law enforcement. We want to make sure we have the sheriff's department, the police department, we want probation, we want DCS, because a lot of our members have DCS involvement. We go to the meetings for DCS, we go to their regular art meetings that they have with their behavioral health providers, because we want to be an integral part of this member's recovery. And so if we don't have everyone at the table in any of the communities that we're working at, then it's very hodgepodgey, and just a lot of stuff falls through the cracks.
I want to speak a little bit to that comment in the chat about turnover. Somebody commented that, that's a problem in their area, and they have 40 SMI clients, and how difficult it is as a case manager to keep up with those changes. And I just want to say I 1000% agree with you and support you in that concern. I think that is what I have seen. It's one of the major challenges and problems with in case management in general. If you can't get a handle on the turnover in your agency, like, there's always going to be chaos, and people are never going to get the best care that they can get. And it's not the case manager's fault. So I think that what I would say to do about that is a lot of the things what we've been talking about already. So making sure there's really great training for people, making sure there's a staff retention plan. It's really supporting your staff and caring for them as people. In my mind, it's like, I want to care for my staff the same way I want to care for my clients. It's, if I'm ignoring the needs of the staff because I'm so focused on productivity or the needs of the clients, then I'm going to have staff turnover. So our job as program managers and administrators and supervisors is to care for our staff and make sure that they are supported to really kind of minimize the burnout as much as possible, so that you don't have a lot of staff turnover. I think that elevates your whole program. It elevates the level of skill that your staff has to provide the care for, their caseload. So I know that's not like a quick fix. It's a very holistic fix, So, but I really think that's a lot of what we're talking about is the solution to staff turnover.
Right. Staff turnover is always related. It's more about people being happy in the work that they're doing. It's not always about money. It's about that culture piece that you keep talking about, you know.
I recently read a great book, and it's called Rough Sleepers, if anybody is interested. But one of the things they talk about, a theme in the book, is like Sisyphus. So that Greek myth about pushing a rock uphill and then having it roll back down, and Sisyphus has to go down, and it's like over and over again. And sometimes case management can feel like that. Like I think that's one thing that burns people out, is like you fix one problem and another problem pops up. So what you have to think about is, if you enjoy rolling that rock uphill, or if you have to enjoy the work for the work itself, not just for the end result, because you're always going to have a caseload. New problems are always going to pop up. There's always going to be crisis. So you really have to like enjoy and find meaning in the work that you're doing.
I love
Matt,
that.
can I really quickly I think one of the questions too was about turnover at behavioral health, through behavioral health, the behavioral health case managers. So for housing providers, when your resident or your clients are experiencing a lot of turnover with their behavioral health professional, that is challenging. We see a lot of that up here in the north, and I don't have an answer. I would say that is a norm, and I don't know if maybe, trying to work a little bit, continuing that collaboration, if they see that there is some help for them as well, because I know that there's high caseloads on that end as well. Maybe that speaks to that a little bit, and how we can help in those areas too, to be partners with them. Maybe that helps their retention. Just a thought.
I think it's important to, like, coming from behavioral health, that's my background personally. So like, I think bringing them to the table on some of those discussions and including them in meetings and staffings and getting to know the staff at the clinics can also be super helpful, and just kind of building rapport. So when you do have some of that staff turnover, you have some established relationships to reach out to as well. I mean, I know that doesn't change the fact that there's turnover, but it does help to reconnect a member to somebody a little bit more quickly. There was a question about Spanish speaking case managers that came up, and basically there was a statement that there's been an increase in Spanish speaking individuals experiencing homelessness. And are there any efforts being made to increase Spanish speaking case managers?
Yeah, our company, we always start over. We are huge on DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is literally like the backbone, and we've the past couple of years we've undergone a major push from the top all the way down to make sure that we're trying to diversify the staff that work with us. That being said, our company also does give a stipend for individuals who pass the Spanish literate people who can speak Spanish. There we go. We're just going to go that way. But no, they actually provide a stipend to help encourage that we have more Spanish speaking staff on.
We actually, there's any salary quote for a new hire, if you are bilingual, there is a pay bump, or a small pay bump that you get added for that, if it's, as long as it's a language that you're going to use. But for our agency, we have the benefit, we do refugee programming, so we have staff that speak 12 different languages. So that's lucky for us. But yeah, we do try to recruit, and we do offer some incentives if you are bilingual.
Awesome. Well, we are close to the end, and I just want to thank everybody for being super open to lots of questions and maybe hard questions. I know we're talking about turnover and maintaining staff, so this is great. I do want to take the last couple of minutes, and I know that you all can't talk as much as I would like, not y'all, but like the audience. If there are additional topics that you all are interested in hearing about, we are super interested in hearing from you about that right now, so that we can actually start to develop this. So we did say that this was the first in the series. This is sort of kind of like a partnership or a collaboration between DES and the Housing Coalition to kind of pull some of these together. So there are going to be future trainings about this. So any topics you are interested in seeing, please put them in the questions, put them in the chat. We're super interested to hear what they are. We will find the subject matter experts to come to the table to kind of talk about some of these things. We all know that case management is one of the, I think, biggest challenges or services in general when it comes to serving individuals experiencing homelessness and how to manage that best. So any ideas? So.
There was a question about refreshing staff, and I think that, I think that there's small, inexpensive ways that you can do that, give them a couple extra hours off here and there, bring in little treats. I know we're big on, just silly little things sometimes, but if it makes someone smile. And I think a lot of times we try to write just some handwritten thank you notes, or, wow, I noticed you do this the other day. That was really great. Or I witnessed this interaction, or I heard that, sometimes just a little note can go a real long way. I mean, obviously we'd love to have elaborate parties and things like that. And, but I think that just trying even some little things make a big difference.
I had also wanted to chime in on the burnout. Yes, food, always food. A couple weeks ago, we did our actual all staff meeting and training at Rudy's Barbecue. So that was a little thing, but for the staff who are like experiencing like a really big traumatic event, then we like, if you need to go home, please go home. If you need to take a couple days, please do so. If there's anything we can do. Because again, like I fully grasp and understand that you're experiencing this because you work here and this is something that you've done for us. So we need to make sure that you're all right as well, just the same way we would check on our member.
It looks like there's some training suggestions in the chat about specific needs for specific groups. So like LGBTQ plus folks and neurodivergent folks. So that is, I think those are great topics, because then I would add to that, if I can, like one that's I find that my staff need like help on or need more information on is working with people who have experiences of like intimate partner violence in the past, and kind of how that shows up in the housing setting, even if they're no longer in that situation. A lot of good information in the chat.
I'm just typing it in the chat right now so that it's there and documented. Thank you.
And I think, one thing that I think is critical as we move forward is some advocacy. I think teaching folks how and where to advocate. We have the coalition, which is fabulous, but there are lots of ways in our own communities that we can advocate. And I will say that part of the challenge, I think, for case management and on all the things we've talked about is that a lot of our federal dollars cover sticks and bricks, or leasing. There is less emphasis that, it's not sexy to fund operations. And how do we get it there? How do we get folks to understand? How do we spin that so that they understand that the housing is a step, but helping folks to learn to live comfortably and sustainably in the housing is the key piece. And we need to keep advocating for that. So I think that could be a topic that folks maybe could benefit from.
I 100% agree. I think the funding conversation is a super important discussion, and helping people to understand that not only where the holes are, but also how to advocate for increased. Well, I appreciate everybody taking the time. We are like 1 minute from the end of our session, and I am a stickler for ending on time. So I like to be, we will stay a couple minutes late today. If you're interested in and you have more questions and you want to throw them in the chat, just to see if anybody wants to hang on and ask some more questions. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming, and looking forward to the next Art of Case Management session. So thank you very much for starting us off amazingly well. Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day.